In December 2008, Israel launched a massive surprise invasion of the Gaza Strip, the most serious Israeli assault against Palestinians since the Six-Day War in 1967. Much of Gaza was reduced to rubble, and more than 1,000 Palestinians died.
Massive war crimes and crimes against humanity were committed by the Israeli army in Gaza. It's not just the Israeli army that is guilty in this massacre and grave violation of international law. It's the entire Israeli establishment, including academic institutions, cultural institutions, and others. Not just that they have not said anything against the massacre. Of course they were silent. There was no condemnation. They fully supported it. So they played a major role in justifying war crimes. So of course they have to be boycotted.
Israel said that continuing rocket attacks justified their three-week offensive, but worldwide protests were overwhelmingly in favor of the besieged Palestinians.
Il faudrait aussi saluer tous les dirigeants courageux à travers le monde aussi, parce qu'il n'y a pas que des traîtres et des complices. Il y a aussi, en Mauritanie, ils ont expulsé l'ambassadeur d'Israël. Hugo Chavez au Venezuela a expulsé l'ambassadeur d'Israël.
But many felt that their politicians did not do enough and were moved to act.
It is specifically the massacres in Gaza that really, in a way, mobilized many people in Europe, in Australia, in the United States particularly, where it's very difficult to have a movement go on. It mobilized them particularly more towards supporting the logic of BDS. The logic of BDS is pressure, not persuasion.
The Palestinian Campaign for Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, or BDS, is a call that came out in 2005, a year after the ruling by the International Court of Justice against the Israeli wall and colonies built on occupied Palestinian territory. It was endorsed by more than 170 unions, political forces, organizations and networks, social movements in Palestine. It represented Palestinian civil society everywhere.
The Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions campaign against Israel, or BDS, has been one of the most effective pro-Palestinian initiatives of the past several years. In an effort to hold Israel accountable for their violation of Palestinian rights, people around the world began organizing high-profile protests and dramatic actions aimed at promoting the use of the B in BDS, boycotts.
The Gaza war was a very big shock, like an earthquake in France, with huge demonstrations. Many people understood that they could not just go back home and cry in front of their television or just merely give some money to charity organizations. So many of them got involved in the BDS campaign. We tried to show how to get active in the BDS campaign by organizing spectacular actions in French supermarkets to show the people what were the goods we should not buy, goods exported by Israel and very often coming from stolen Palestinian lands. And this was very interesting because not only then we were more numerous as activists for Palestine, but also with new generations of young people and people from all origins. I mean Muslims, Catholics, Jews, atheists, and working all together.
Imagine Israël, on voit bien, Imagine Israël. Des produits qui sont vendus à Carrefour. Et oui, la honte pour la France. La honte. Sur des territoires volés, des terres aux Palestiniens, on vole leur eau, leurs terres, et on vend ça à Carrefour. Quelle honte.
L'Afrique du Sud a commencé à trembler quand tous les pays ont boycotté. Donc ce que vous faites, moi je trouve ça très bien.
C'est pris sur le dos des Palestiniens, ça.
Sur les terres palestiniennes.
Voilà.
Et on vient
les
vendre
terres
ça à
volées.
Carrefour. Quelle honte.
Voilà, c'est marqué importé de Israël.
Et on fait passer un message à Sarkozy, les politiques. S'ils ne veulent pas agir, nous on va agir. Voilà. Les lingettes pour bébés qui sont vendues ici aux Français. C'est inadmissible. Ils tuent des bébés, ils veulent vendre des lingettes pour bébés après.
C'est de la mauvaise qualité. C'est Clémentine de Jaffa. C'est autant de bombes avec lesquelles ils ont détruit des maisons habitées, des écoles, des mosquées. On les achète?
So we demonstrated in all France and in places that are well known, like Champs-Élysées. So, for example, we went there to protest against the sale of Ahava cosmetics that are labeled to come from Israel while they come from the West Bank, from settlements, which is completely illegal. The boycott is not only fruit and vegetables. We went to see Vanessa Paradis, very famous in France and elsewhere, to tell her not to go and sing in Israel.
On ne peut pas, quand on a une notoriété comme la sienne, se rendre en Israël, ce qui serait forcément comment dire, interprété comme une sorte de soutien à cet État.
She decided after the show to cancel the fact to go to Israel.
If Israeli workers or tomato growers or avocado growers cannot be exempted and shouldn't be exempted, there's no reason on earth that academics should have special immunity. They don't have special immunity. In fact, they are benefiting from the very system which oppresses us. I mean, we're talking about structures of domination. They are part of it. They have not challenged it, and therefore those institutions cannot claim to be special.
Israeli institutions, especially the academy, especially universities, cultural institutions, economic, sports, and so on, they're all complicit. Complicity is not just by silence. It's not just that they don't condemn the occupation, which is a fact. No Israeli university has ever condemned the occupation.
The production of action videos proved to be one of the most effective methods of BDS because activists around the world could copy the same effective tactics. This supermarket protest would be reproduced worldwide, but it also drew the attention of Zionist groups, which led to scores of lawsuits.
I think the government is trying to criminalize BDS campaign. Obviously, they obey to instruction from the pro-Israeli lobby. In this matter, we feel that we are not more in a democracy. The government tells the church how they have to judge, and this is completely unacceptable. We are in a democracy, and we are supposed to have a separation between politics and the law and the church. And there is nothing racist in protesting against the politics of a country, which is not a protestation or rejection of the individuals.
But despite the pressure, the French legal system has usually upheld BDS's right to political expression. This French senator was not convicted over her participation in a BDS action.
Well, the decision is a good decision because it enforces the freedom of speech and the freedom of opinion.
Despite their flouting of international law, Israel is no economic outcast, boasting one of the richest economies in the Middle East. But until they comply with global rules, many people are urging corporations not to do business with Israel, which brings us to the D in BDS, divestment.
It is very, very crucial that big corporations will be held responsible for their involvement in illegal activity in the occupation. We have investigated Veolia. Veolia is a French company, and there is a big European campaign about Veolia because Veolia is going to be the operator for the Jerusalem light rail system.
We are in the settlement of Pisgat Ze'ev in North Jerusalem. This settlement is where the tramway starts. The objective of the tramway is to make the settlement, this is the biggest settlement in Jerusalem, closer to the city, and allow the people of the settlement to commute to West Jerusalem. What we're speaking here is not only ethnic cleansing, but more clearly a situation of a reality of apartheid. This tram line is being constructed by a local and international corporation, which include companies like Alstom and Veolia. But thanks to the international boycott campaign, it started to be very problematic for them to invest in the construction of the tramway. Veolia have lost, and Alstom, both of them, have lost several contracts because while they are building here, they are breaking the international law. All these settlements, this settlement is totally illegal. According to the international law, it is forbidden for Israel to transfer its own population into occupied territories. This is according to the 4th Geneva Convention, and it was ratified by the International Court of Justice on July 9, 2004. The settlements are illegal both in the West Bank proper and in East Jerusalem. But not only the settlements are illegal, it's illegal to contribute to the committing of this crime. Any company that invests in this area, like Veolia or Alstom, which are building this tramway, are themselves breaking the international law.
Since 1948, Israel was created on the destruction of Palestinian society. So they destroyed Palestinian society and expelled most of the Palestinians. Between 750 to 850,000 Palestinians were expelled, were ethnically cleansed, to make room, so to speak, for the Jewish immigrants coming from Europe escaping from the Holocaust. So it was a colonial project from the beginning, intended to break down Palestinian society, to prevent Palestinians from organizing themselves again into a society. So the Palestinians were immediately segmented into Palestinians inside what became Israel, Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, as well as Palestinian refugees. This segmentation is continuing. In the last few years, Israel has segmented the West Bank into Bantustans, preventing free movement between one Bantustan and the other. To move from Jericho to Nablus, from Nablus to Bethlehem, from Ramallah to Jenin, you need a special military permit. So it has become extremely difficult for merchants, for farmers, for students, for doctors, for teachers to go to their work, to go to their land, to go to their universities. So Israel is basically slowly but very persistently not just ethnically cleansing the Palestinians, destroying the possibility of development of a Palestinian society inside the historic land of Palestine.
Consumer boycotts and corporate pressures may be effective, but overt political measures are still necessary. The struggle to persuade international institutions, individual countries, and local governments to take concrete steps against Israel takes us to S for sanctions. As Israel has been accused of war crimes, it seems the place to